We will move now to Irene Lawrence from the USA. She serves as a board member for WDI USA, as well as the program coordinator for WDI USA's Nonviolent Direct Actions. Irene has a Master of Public Policy from Duke University, and in her day job, she works with state governments and advocates for the formerly incarcerated population. Because of her background in justice reform, her biggest concern is for the rights of incarcerated women. So welcome, Irene. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Long before I was familiar with the concept of gender identity, I struggled for many years with unease in what I would now call liberal feminism. By this, I mean the type of feminism that either praises or blames individual women for their choices in a given situation, with no structural analysis of the options that she was given, or even claiming that she prefers her oppressed state. Growing up as a millennial, though I was never explicitly told there were things I couldn't do as a female, it was clear to me that women were not given the same permission as men to have full humanity. I frequently saw individual women's mistakes used against all women to dismiss the whole premise of patriarchy. As a case in point, just last week, while discussing with a male relative the rampant sexual violence within the Catholic Church, his response was that there were some nuns who took advantage of children too. I kid you not. This framing always left me feeling helpless to describe the world I experienced, one in which I have many privileges and yet also don't feel safe in many spaces. When I first started hearing some of my favorite feminist podcasters discussing gender identity, and how quickly the seemingly innocuous idea of preferred pronouns devolved into men being allowed in women's prisons, I almost immediately realized that I was one of those dreaded TERFs. They were making so much sense. I quickly discovered that the smallest push against the logic of gender identity would lead to a cascade of personal and professional challenges. After posting about this issue once with great discretion on social media, even friends who knew my character quickly turned on me. And as someone working alongside many criminal justice reform advocates in North Carolina, it feels almost impossible to bring up this issue in a professional context. Especially in the context of justice reform, being anti-racist is seen as being incompatible with fighting for women's rights, because any push to hold men accountable for their harm is seen as complicity with the carceral state, which disproportionately incarcerates men of color. As I'm usually one of the only white women in these situations, it's a difficult context in which to speak up. My primary concern, however, in my work life is and has always been for incarcerated women. About the same time I began to realize how taboo it was to speak about women's sex-based rights, I found WDI and read and signed the Declaration. The Declaration seemed like it was full of points that were so obvious they shouldn't need to be stated. Doesn't everyone already know that mothers are female? How could it be controversial that we need to eliminate violence against women? Seeing the cohesion of the Declaration made me more committed to understanding the radical feminist lens, which was the only analysis that seemed to have been right about gender identity all along. Indeed, as more and more groups of people who are not necessarily radical feminists are waking up to the dangers of gender identity, the importance of WDI's grounding in radical feminism becomes ever more apparent to me. Armed with radical feminism's analysis for understanding females' unique needs and how and why gender strips us of our rights, we can be more effective advocates on a myriad of women's issues. By not wasting time pandering to men who always need to be reminded of how patriarchy harms them too, radical feminism gives us the space to start to truly imagine what a better world for women and girls would look like. This all-female intellectual space that WDI provides has been life-changing for me. By politicizing personal situations, I've learned to critique both myself and the world without wallowing in self-blame or anger at an individual woman's behavior. By viewing feminism as a continuous push for greater sovereignty for females, rather than a series of disjointed waves, I've learned to feel a sense of connection with prior generations of radical feminists whose struggles gave me all the freedoms I value in my life. In uniting with women a generation or two older, I've gained greater respect for the fights for women and girls that were won in my lifetime, and have lost all fear of becoming older myself. Despite being risk averse and not naturally confrontational, I am also not one to do things halfway. Once I became a radical feminist, the principles and strategies of nonviolent direct action immediately clicked for me, especially as I learned how viciously the most compelling voices trying to speak against gender identity had been silenced. I have been inspired by the courage of women from WDI and Wolf who are willing to directly confront men who want to harm us as we speak about our rights. Watching them has made me realize that I'm capable of this courage too, and deciding that I'm willing to take significant risks to protect these rights has been a deeply empowering experience. Not being inclined to self-advocacy either, I had to unlearn many fears to start speaking up for women's rights. I was accustomed to being well-liked, that is, until I developed enough self-respect to prioritize speaking truthfully over protecting the feelings of others. But now that I'm here, I can't go back. The paradigm shift has been so fast and so complete, I truly don't know how I made sense of the world before I found radical feminism or WDI. I'm grateful for the opportunity to organize women to speak publicly on our rights through NVDA, and for all those at WDI pushing to advance the Declaration's goals. Thank you.